Hello, and welcome to my final project for EDUC642 at Moravian College. I'm going to walk you through the Google Slides presentation that I created, and I hope you enjoy. The project is based on the 2 books assigned in the course as well as other materials. The first book is Activist Art and Social Justice Pedagogy, Engaging Students in Local Issues Through the Arts. And the second book is The Arts, Education, and Social Change, Little Signs of Hope. This is the title of the course, An Arts-Based Approach to World Cultures and Social Justice. Oftentimes at Northeast Middle School, the German teacher teaches a world cultures course, which I have not taught, but the teacher before me had taught for 3 years before I arrived in 2018. The picture in the top right corner is our Rally for Peace Club. The picture in the bottom right corner are our ESOL students and the recipients of awards for their spelling bee. And the picture on the bottom left is our World Language Club. I'm Daniel Wynn. I'm the instructor. My students know me as Herr Wynn. This picture is of our World Language Club, and there I am, of course, with my German hat. So this information will be on the course syllabus, my email, office hours, the duration of the course, which will be 2 of our 30-day rotations, where we see the kids 3 out of 6 days, so essentially every other day, each period totaling 46 minutes. So the course description states, in this course, we will investigate the social fabric of communities of different parts of the world. We'll examine injustices that have plagued societies since the early modern era and compare them to those we face in our communities today. Topics discussed, but not limited to, will be race, gender, age, sexual orientation, religion, nationality, education, mental and physical ability. Course objectives are, by the end of this course, students will be able to demonstrate knowledge of social justice issues faced by our community and others in the world, use an arts-based approach of their choice to portray social justice issues, communicate their feelings and personal stories with others about issues related to social justice. This is just some of the vocabulary that we will present throughout the course. Topics discussed, but also not limited to. We have European conquests of the Americas and the resulting devastation, history of slavery in the United States, the rise of Hitler and the Third Reich and the world's reactions, immigration in the USA compared to that in European countries with a focus on Germany. Activities and projects. The first is collage project from the first book that was assigned Activist Art and Social Justice Pedagogy. This will be an introduction project, so they'll be exploring themselves and introduce themselves through the collage to others. The next project will be the painting project, and this project will be done at the end of our investigation of the European conquest of the Americas. After that, we'll go into storytelling. Storytelling was taken from the chapter in the second book, The Arts, Education, and Social Change, that discusses the Holocaust. We'll be looking at Anna Frank and her experiences during the Holocaust. The next topic and activity will be participatory theater. We will watch the PBS documentary, The Black Atlantic, 1500 to 1800. Then we will have discussions, tell personal stories. I will create 2 scenes, and the students will rehearse and perform the scenes for each other. And I will go into that further in a bit. The meme project will be our last project, and we will do this project at the end of our immigration in the USA and Germany topic. So the collage project, who am I? We're looking at cultural identity. We're working with 8th graders here. So these students are still discovering who they are. They have influences from many different sources: their parents, friends, siblings, family, mass media, the community, school, teachers. The list is endless. They are going through a stage in their life where they're developing mentally and physically, and they're putting it all together. So we're going to take a look at ourselves through a collage project. Things the students should consider are their views on life, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them angry, what are their interests, what interests might they like to explore, what things do they think should change in the world, and what things do they think should stay the same. Materials we'll use are listed, but not limited to. We're going to talk about metaphors. What metaphors will the students use to present themselves with the materials provided? How will it affect their collage and their identity and how they see themselves? How does the placement of their metaphors play a role in their identities? How do they perceive themselves before, now, and in the future? Students should also think of one action word that they would like to represent their collage. This action word should deal with the transformation that they would like to make. They've represented their identities through their metaphors and their 3D collages. And what action word would they like all these metaphors, their interests, their desires, how they see the world, what would they like this one action word to point to? How would they like to move forward? When we're finished the collages, we'll introduce them to each other. We'll talk about their metaphors, and they'll compare their metaphors to their peers. We'll talk about our differences and similarities in our emotions, our feelings, our physical appearances. The hopes of this project will be that we can create a good classroom climate, classroom culture where we understand each other, where we can see our differences, understand them, and not be afraid of them, so that continuing on in the class, we'll have cohesiveness that we'll enjoy while we're continuing with our work. Our next project is going to be our painting project. We're discussing the topic of European conquest of the Americas. We're going to be looking at things by Kay Walking Stick and other artists. Kay Walking Stick was discussed in activist art and social justice pedagogy. We're going to look at her paintings and others that depict the great losses of indigenous peoples of the Americas. And we are going to supplement that with the PBS documentary We Shall Remain, episode 5 about Wounded Knee and the massacre and tragedies that happened there. We'll discuss the impact and the losses of generations due to genocide of the indigenous peoples in America. And after we have classroom discussions about the paintings and the documentary, the students will create their own paintings, which will depict a scene that depicts either an injustice taken from the paintings or the documentary, or from another topic. Storytelling in theater, Anna Frank. This will be our next topic and project. The storytelling project was taken from the Arts, Education, and Social Change. I enjoyed this chapter very much. I like the idea of telling the story, talking about the roles that are played by people, and that there is no neutral role. If we're not part of the solution, then we're part of the problem. I want to replicate that with this topic and unit on Anna Frank. So I'll be telling stories by Anna Frank from excerpts from her diary. After I tell the stories, we will discuss them as a class. Then we'll watch the short documentary that is presented at the Anna Frank House in Amsterdam, The Short Life of Anna Frank. We'll have much classroom discussion after that. The reason why we're looking at Anna Frank is because she was around the same age as my 8th graders, and so it'll be relatable for the kids. Her feelings and emotions and her experiences will be relatable. We'll take questions about the stories and the documentary afterwards and have classroom discussion. We'll then have a discussion of roles. Remember, there are no neutral roles. So students will talk about the victims and the perpetrators They'll create lists of the types of people that they would identify as victim and perpetrator, as in who in the school would be doing the bullying, who would be picking on students, and then who would be the victims, who would be the ones getting made fun of. Students who are assigned the perpetrators should identify actions and behaviors that they would use to establish dominance over the victim, and we'll be using those behaviors and actions later when we do our theater. For the theater, we'll split the class into two groups. So one group will be performing for the other and vice versa. We'll ask for volunteers for a victim and perpetrator. The perpetrator should be outgoing because they have a pivotal role. They're going to have to improvise and be very outgoing and charismatic so that they can, to the best of their ability, exhibit the behaviors that would show dominance over the victim. The rest of the class will circle around the victim and the perpetrator. And again, this storytelling and theater activity is taken directly from the Arts, Education, and Social Change from Chapter 7 and Judith Black. The rest of the class circles around them. For approximately 3 minutes, the perpetrator will be asked to produce dominant behaviors over their victim. They can improvise their own actions or behaviors, or they can use behaviors from the list that we created in groups. At the end of the 3 minutes, everybody freezes. The students will be asked to evaluate their body language and feelings at that moment. Questions such as, did they laugh? Did they feel tense? Were they appalled or disgusted? Why did nobody do anything? These types of questions will be asked. And this is the point when they should realize that the exercise was about them as bystanders and not the victim or the perpetrator. After class discussion of the theater, the students will be asked to create an action plan in groups that will identify and stop bullying. They should come up with an example of bullying and then explain how they will use their plan to identify and stop the bullying. The next topic and project will be based on the PBS documentary, The Black Atlantic, 1500 to 1800, which depicts the transatlantic slave trade that shaped the African American people and the tragedies that happened over these centuries. After the documentary, we'll have a long discussion, and then in a circle, we'll discuss personal stories of racism experienced or observed by teacher and students. We'll talk about the cause and effect of stereotyping and bullying as it relates to racism. I'll share some of my personal stories. I'll ask students to share some of their personal stories. And then I will write 2 scenes that integrate students' personal experiences. And half of the class will perform 1 scene for the other half of the class and vice versa. We'll use participatory theater to engage students in discussion and generate alternate scenes and solutions to hate. The 2 scenes will be collected from stories that the students tell. They'll be based on the scenes but not particular to any one of the students' stories. Each scene will result in a conflict experienced by one of the characters. Half the class will perform 1 scene and half the class will perform the other. The students will rehearse and practice their scene. When they're ready, they'll perform in front of the audience, who will participate in a Q&A, which I'll administer. Teachers will ask questions like, how does the person targeted by racism or being stereotyped feel? How does the person being racist or doing the stereotyping feel? What is the cause of the racism? Why is this happening? What power do we have to stop the racism, to stop this from happening? How can we identify it and how can we put a stop to it? What are some alternatives to the conflict in the scenario? Have you experienced any racism or observed any racism such as this in person or on TV or on the internet? How could this scene be portrayed differently? What would an alternative be to the way this scene ends? How can we resolve the conflict? I'll ask for volunteers from the class to come improvise alternate scenes. We'll continue Q&A and the discussion with the audience and actors, and we'll continue to ask for volunteers to perform alternate scenes until we're all satisfied with the outcome. The participatory theater should help students be able to put themselves in the shoes of people who are discriminated against or people who are targets of racism. It should help them understand the cause and effect of when we stereotype. It should help them learn how to identify racism and identify stereotyping and how to change the behavior. It should help them understand how not to just be a bystander and how to create change. When we're finished, we'll have classroom discussion We'll talk about how we can celebrate each other's similarities and differences. When we're finished, students will be given a questionnaire with questions about racism, stereotyping, and bullying, and how they can identify and put a stop to it. A link to the rubric you'll find here. Students will be graded on the 5 projects that they create throughout the course. Each project will be worth 20% for a total of 100%. Prerequisites for the course will be from social studies, ELA, and other courses. They will have learned about slavery in the US, the European conquest of the Americas, Native American life pre-Columbus, and our second step program during our activity period every day, which presents social emotional lessons with topics such as mindsets and goals, thoughts, emotions and decisions, values and friendships, and serious peer conflicts. Anticipated problems that may come up. The course material is very sensitive. There are issues that students could be experiencing personally, either directly or indirectly. There could be any number of effects that these students could be dealing with, such as anxiety and depression. The teacher must present all information objectively and allow students to generate their own opinions. We must always mediate any tension, arguments, or emotions that come out from the students. In some cases, students may need to take a break from the course content and talk to a counselor or another teacher, or perhaps call home. Prior approval for this course and its content must be granted by administration. That's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the final project. It is a preliminary outline of a course that I would love to teach at Northeast Middle School. World Cultures class was offered to students. It was taught by the German teacher before I came in 2018, and I would like to tighten up this outline and present it to my administration in hopes that one day I'll be able to teach a class that integrates socially engaging topics with the arts. And what a perfect class to be able to do it with, World Cultures. Thank you and goodbye.